Good afternoon. The difficulty with this that is unfolding to me is that in our human nature we all want something or need something, and that something is blocking our spiritual development. It doesn't even make any difference if we want something good. It's still blocking our spiritual development. The reason being that anything that is separate and apart from God sets up in us, or rather the desire or need for something separate and apart from God sets up within us a sense of separation from God, or the belief that we could be satisfied with something other than the presence and power of God, or separate from the presence and power of God. Now, let us illustrate that. This morning, I was dictating mail, and my window faces right out here on the lake. And as I was dictating, I was looking out there, not really seeing anything, not noticing anything, because I was concentrating on this hearing the still small voice, because if I dictate a letter to you, I don't want to tell you any news about me. In fact, I don't want to tell you anything. I want God to speak through me to you, and therefore when I'm dictating I have to be in a sense of listening, as if somewhere inside of me I'm listening for an invisible voice or invisible presence to speak through me, and so I'm almost staring out. Now, in that attitude, I am consciously one with God, and then whatever comes through is the Word of God, and it brings with it the presence and power of God which melteth the earth. Well, as I was dictating this morning, the very wonderful thing happened. A golden-breasted bird, I guess a robin, came to my window, and he very much wanted in, but he sat up on that rail and just looked at me and looked and looked and looked and wouldn't move. And I called Emma, and she stood there watching, and it wouldn't move. It just kept looking right in at us. But there was a window and curtain in between us, and eventually it flew away. But just a couple of seconds after that, a sparrow flew to the same spot and wouldn't move away, and kept flying off and back and flying off and back, just looking in at that window. Now, the answer is I did not desire birds. I had no thought of birds. My desire was God contact. But it brought to me the companionship and the melody, or whatever, the beauty of those birds. And Jesus would have said, these are the added things. You sought only the kingdom of God, but you got those beautiful birds and their song and their love added things. So it is then that at no time, since I'm in this work, ever at any time, have I ever desired to be a teacher, and I have never wanted students. Never have and still don't. And yet my conscious contact with God brings students, whether it's in England or Africa, Switzerland, or wherever it is, students appear. But I can assure you that if I wanted students, they would take wings and fly away. The very desire, even for something good, even to be of good service, is a barrier to spiritual development, for we have no right even to want to give good service. We have no right to want to help anybody. We have no right to want to do good. That's a barrier to God. We have only one right: to know thee aright. Whom to know aright is life eternal. And then, if God places us in a service, teaching or healing or nursing or whatever it may be, painting, writing plays or books, that's all right. Let's perform it, because that will be permitting ourselves to be a transparency through which God can shine. But for us to desire it would be to glorify me. And that's wrong. That's a barrier to spiritual development. Now, the reason it is difficult to live the spiritual life is we are continuously desiring something, or to do something, or to be something, or to benefit someone, or to bless someone, or to do something, and that's the barrier. The raising of the barrier, or the dissolving of the barrier, is in the dissolving of our desires, our wants, our wishes, or our outlined thoughts. So that when we can go to God pure, absolutely pure, knowing I'm not asking for supply, I'm not asking for companionship, I'm not asking for service, I'm asking only that God's grace be established in me, that God envelop me and permeate me, that I may come to know thee aright, that I may come to the realization of my oneness with God, that I may be consciously one with my Father, with the creative principle of my being. That's all. That's all. I have no further needs, no further wants, no further desires, just to live in conscious union with God. Then, that union with God, acting through me, forces me into doing this, doing that, doing the other, and it brings to me all that is necessary to fulfill my experience. As long as I don't outline what it is to be, as long as I don't desire it. Now, in the same way, when I am consciously one with God, I am consciously one with that plant, the life of that plant. Not the human life, not the animal life, but the spiritual life of that plant. Because even behind nature, even behind the life of nature, there is spiritual life. And therefore, as I am one with God, I am instantaneously one with the spiritual life of that plant, and that plant will grow and prosper in my presence. As long as it is a part of my consciousness, it will partake of my consciousness, and I will be its bread, its wine, its water. I will be its resurrection. That is my consciousness of truth. My consciousness of my oneness with God will be the resurrected life, the renewed life of that plant. So it is with patience. Students, my consciousness of God becomes the consciousness of my patients and students. Therefore, as long as they are in my consciousness, I am the bread, the meat, and the wine, and the water unto them. And they are eating of my consciousness. They are eating of my understanding. They are eating of the bread, meat, wine, and water, which is the consciousness of truth, which I have realized. And therefore, my consciousness of my oneness with God becomes a law of harmony unto them. And that is why in our work we have discovered that thousands of students all over the world who maintain contact with us either through the monthly letter, the reading of the books, or hearing of the tapes, find that they go through years with little or no disease or discord. They go through years with little or no problems of serious natures, and those that come up dissolve themselves more readily. That's not true in the first or second or third year, because you must remember that they have not yet learned how to make contact with this consciousness. They have not yet accepted it. They're still living their own lives. They have not yet accepted, or they're living half with the infinite way and half with some other form of metaphysics, or with 6 different forms sometimes, and they belong to nothing, and their consciousness is united with nothing. But from the moment that a student realizes that this is their way of life, and they have really united themselves with it, they begin to find that infinite way consciousness itself maintains their freedom for them. We found when in the first year that the Asian flu went around the world, that not one of our students had it. Not one of our students came under it. Not one had to ask for help. And not one had to ask one of our practitioners for help. In other words, this consciousness became the law of freedom unto them. And the second year that it came around, it was very near that good, although not quite. And probably because there were more students and some not fully attuned to that consciousness. No. That is how healings take place. I, if I be lifted up, shall draw all men unto me. In other words, I, if I be lifted into the God consciousness, lift those who come to me to that same state of consciousness, and they partake of its fruitage. Then the Master says, go and sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon you. In other words, don't go back to the state of consciousness you were originally in, because it can only bear the same kind of fruit. Now that you've been lifted into the higher consciousness, be sure that you continue living in the higher consciousness, because now you're worse off than you were before. Before, you could have done a lot of things that would bring no penalty on you because you didn't have the higher, more rarefied consciousness. Now you cannot violate even those tiny, minor things without paying a penalty for it. In other words, even accepting appearances at face value is enough to bring a penalty on us as if we'd been committing murder, theft, and adultery all in one day. You just cannot afford, when you have touched or been touched by this consciousness, you just cannot afford to be untrue to your highest sense of integrity. Because in the degree that you come down from that, in the slightest degree, you suffer. You can't help it because you have become sensitive. You have become attuned to the spirit. And you can't stand the coarse things of the flesh. You can't stand. If you sow to the flesh, you reap corruption. And that has a far deeper meaning than the world takes. It really doesn't mean only if you commit the violent sins of the body. Oh, no. Paul knew better than that. It means if in any way or in any degree you put your faith in form rather than the essence or substance of the form, in that degree you're going to bear only material fruitage, which is corruption. You see, no matter what we get humanly, it is subject to deterioration, decay, death. It makes no difference whether it's a fortune. It makes no difference whether it's a marriage. It makes no difference whether it's a physical body. Anything that we acquire humanly has only the substance within itself that we call 60 years and 10. In other words, it's dying all the time from birth. But if through our conscious oneness with God a good comes into our experience, it's a permanent good. What God hath joined together, no man can put asunder. So that if by virtue of our conscious union with God money comes to us, or home, or marriage, or companionship, or employment, or service, it's until death do us part relationship. It's an eternal one, and we can never be separated from the good which has come to us through our conscious oneness with God. That is why, then, I have witnessed students who have gone through a temporary sense of lack, economic lack. And for a while they took their stand spiritually, and then the going got too rough and they started to resort to human manipulations, and then found they lost their whole demonstration. I have seen other students who found economic abundance come to them very, very soon after they entered the spiritual path, and I've seen them get so fascinated with the money or the things that money would buy that they lost their demonstration. In other words, it isn't money that makes us lose our demonstration. It can be a lack of money. It's neither circumcision nor uncircumcision that does the work for us. Nothing in the outer form. It is actually conscious union with God. So that if we go through economic lack and we stand fast not to demonstrate supply, no. Demonstrate life eternal. Let demonstrate God, the substance of all form. Conscious union with God, then the supply will unfold. Surely we may be driven to hunger before it happens, but what difference can it make when we're out on this thing? If we have to die in the attempt, we've got to do it. The same was with health. Many a person has come to death's door before they found God, and couldn't find God until they reached there. The reason? They were trying to find help. As long as you're trying to find help, you won't find God. It is when we give up that search for forms and realize, I don't care about health. If I had all the health there is in the world today, it could be sickness tomorrow. As a matter of fact, what difference does it make how healthy we are or even how youthful we are when we know the passage of time is going to wreck both of them? And in the human picture, it really doesn't make any difference how young and beautiful you may be. Just wait long enough and the picture's going to be reversed. So there's no use of taking pride in youth or health or wealth, because they're all fleeting. But if we make God our goal, if we realize nothing's going to satisfy me but conscious union with God, there'll never be such a thing as age, there'll never be such a thing as lack, there'll never be such a thing as loneliness, there'll never be such a thing as emptiness in our lives, for God is fulfillment. In thy presence is fulfillment of life. And there's no other way, only in thy presence. In thy presence, yes, in the presence of God, there's liberty, freedom, joy, freedom from lack of economics, lack of companionship, freedom from all lack lies in the attaining of the consciousness of the presence of God. So you can see why there are barriers to our spiritual progress. And the barriers are the hopes, ambitions, and desires we have, even when they're good. I have had mothers write to me, isn't it right for me to feel that I want health for my child? And I write back and say, no. And they're sure I'm cruel. No, it isn't right for you to want health for your child. It's only right for you to want God for your child, and to know that God is the life of your child. God is the mind, and God is the soul, and desire God alone for your child. And then all the things will be added unto it. Oh, no, they can't release that word health. Right? That's the thing. They can't release the word health. And other people can't release the word rent, or food, or clothing. They can't let go of it. And no, that's the thing that must be solved first. And so it is that I have letters that say, if you can just get rid of this pain from me, then I can seek God. And the other one says, now if you just get me past this supply thing, so I won't have to think of money, then I can think of God. No, if you can think of God first, you will have these other things. But do you not see that this is not the way we were born of women? Do you not see that man whose breath is in his nostrils must always want things, conditions, persons, and therefore is never free to seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness? So it is that if the Spirit of God dwell in you, then do you have the capacity to release your desire, even for human life, and say, what possible difference could it make whether I'm looking at life from that side or this side? Life must be eternal. It can't be any otherwise. It must be eternal. We have seen too many children die at birth. We've seen them die at 1 year. We've seen our children 18, 19, 20 go out to wars and die. So that we know that life must be eternal, or there would have been no purpose in their being born. If they were born just to die a little later, no. They weren't born for that purpose. Their life is eternal. And as far as God is concerned, it makes no difference which side of the border it's on. Life is still going on and fulfilling itself. So when we come to a place, too, where that barrier is down, where we're not demanding that life fulfill itself on this side of the grave, that's another step forward in our spiritual development, because now we can say, that's another thing I'm not desiring. This side, or that side, or the other side. I'm not caring about sides. Fulfillment is what I'm caring about. If the Master taught us any lesson in dying, it was that he must have known that where he was going to was just as good a place as where he was leaving, maybe better. So you see that the barrier to meditation is our desire for something, for some condition. You really discover later that meditation is very easy. But it's only when you come to a place that you can be sure there's nothing you want from meditation. You're not going there for any purpose. You're just going there to be still. And then it's very, very easy. It's only that we take into our meditation a desire for something, and that desire for something is a desire for an effect. We may want a truth to do healing work with, but that's an effect. We may want the truth about supply, we may want the truth about health, we may want the truth about compassion, but all those things are effects. And as long as we're desiring even good thoughts, we're desiring effect. We don't want good thoughts. We don't want even true thoughts. It doesn't mean we don't accept them when they come. It means we don't desire them. We desire only one thing: peace, peace, peace. Nothing do I seek. Nothing but the realization of my conscious oneness with God. Just the realization that I and my Father are one. If I and my Father are one, all that the Father hath is mine. If I am one with God, I am one with spiritual life, all spiritual life, all around the globe. On the other side of the grave, this side, and the side that hasn't come into this world yet, there are just as many billions of individual souls who have never been born as there are those who have been born and are on earth, and as there are who have been on earth and gone beyond. There's no blank before any more than there's a blank on earth. All space is filled with the life of God. All space, all time, past, present, future. And we are one with all of that. We are one with that which is unborn. I have lost track of the amount of cases that I have had. We just use the word cases to describe these things, of young women who have been told medically that they could not have children, and who have come to this work and who have had children. One and sometimes two, and one even has three. After the doctors have said that there is no physical way for it to happen, but it has happened. And there's never been a failure. And the reason is just what I'm saying to you now. Life exists before birth, and life exists during and after birth, and life exists after death, because God is life. And God is the only life, and there's no power to prevent the life of God expressing. Nothing, there's no law that can stop the life of God expressing. And that's all it's to it. And the life of God proves to express itself. We can hold it back by the very belief that it's dependent on a physical experience, that it's dependent on a physical organ or function. The life of God is spirit, and the life of God needs no physical aids. And therefore, the life of God can express itself whithersoever it will. And it does. It does. But we have to remove the barriers from our thinking. The barriers that would say that, no, it's dependent on a process. It's dependent on an organ. It's dependent on a function. It isn't at all. It's dependent on God's grace. And when God's grace wants the life of God to appear, that is the way it happens. Now, to be consciously one with God is to be consciously one with the spiritual life of all being and all form. Therefore, whatever is necessary to our experience will come into our experience. If it's patients to heal, they'll find us. If it's students to teach, they'll find us. If it's pictures to paint, they'll come out. If it's books to be written, they'll come out. If it's marriage, if it's family, if it's business, it'll all come, it'll all flow. You can't stop God fulfilling itself once you've made contact with God. If you do not make contact with God, God is still fulfilling itself, but not in your experience. So it is that harmony, successful living, depends on one demonstration alone: the demonstration of conscious oneness with God. That's all it is. And if you come to me with anything, and I become consciously one with God, that oneness with God appears in your life as the experience you need. I may not know what that is, and you may not know what it is. All we know is the lack we feel, but we don't know the nature of fulfillment. And we can't know it. All we can know is, if I make my conscious contact with God, my life will be fulfilled according to God's plan, not my outline. And God's plan usually turns out to be much better than I could have planned. So it is. One person has a fever, and another one has chills. And one has a growth, and the other one has a lack of substance. In our experience, it makes no difference. All we have to do is become consciously one with God, and whatever the nature of the patient's demonstration is to be, it is. So if it has to fulfill itself in more flesh, it will. If it has to demonstrate itself in less flesh, it will. If it has to demonstrate itself in more companionship, it will. If it needs less companionship, it will. Whatever the form, that which we call divine intelligence and divine love, it takes care of the whole matter. We must never interpose our belief about it. In my new book, there is a chapter on the relationship of oneness, and in it, it cautions our practitioners never to give human advice when they are called upon for marital affairs, never to be in favor of separation, and never to be in favor of staying together, but to have no opinion about it at all. Go and make conscious contact with God, and let God do to the life of that couple what it will. And if their life is going to be fulfilled together, all of the obstacles will be removed. But if it's necessary for them to be separated to find their fulfillment, believe me, it's going to bring about the separation quickly and painlessly and without loss to either side. But if you enter such a case with a preconceived notion of what life should be and what the demonstration should be, you come down to the level of a marriage counselor or a psychological advisor, and that can be terribly bad. I don't mean always is, but I mean it can be. The point is that in our function, we do not determine whether people should be married or single. We do not determine whether they should live in this city or that city or this country or that country. We don't determine where they shall be or why or how. Our function alone is to go to God and make conscious union with God, and then let the presence of God do what it will. Now, that same principle works when I am having a lecture or a class. Never do I go to God for a message. Never, I never have, and I never will. When I meditate, I go to God for the realization of God's presence. When I attain that, God's presence makes up the program. And I can tell by the fruitage that it's been all right. If I went to God for a message, I would be going for an effect. I would be going for a form, and I'd lose the whole thing. But as long as I don't care for a message, as long as I'm not interested in having a message, as long as I desire only to have the presence of God, it's the presence of God that will speak. And you see what happens, of course you can't know this, many of my students have witnessed it, that messages come through me that I didn't know when I sat down to give it. In other words, things that I myself have not yet known come through during classes. We had a most wonderful experience a few years ago. All of the years that I have been in this work, students have been asking, tell us about the Sermon on the Mount. And always I say, I'm sorry, I can't, I don't understand it. I can't, you won't find it in any of my writings, and I never put anything in my writings until God gives it to me. I have no opinions about truth, and I have no theories about truth. Anything that's in my writing came as a direct message from God, or it wouldn't be there, and I have nothing to give you on the Sermon on the Mount. And in 1956, sitting in class one night, the voice said to me, Sermon on the Mount. And I turned around and I answered it, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about the Sermon on the Mount. And it repeated it the second time, Sermon on the Mount. I'm sorry, I don't know what to say about it. And then the third time it said, open the Bible to 5th chapter of Matthew. And I did. And as I started to read, the whole secret of the Sermon on the Mount was revealed, and I gave it to the class that night. Now you see, I couldn't get a message, but I surely got God. And having God, God could give the message that it wanted through me. Now that's happened hundreds of times in our work, literally hundreds and hundreds of times, because much of all that's in my books are things that I didn't know until they came out of my mouth. And I was taught them at the same time that the students were. Because my work has never been to learn through the mind. So I had no way of gaining knowledge, except as it came through inspiration. And so I know from experience that I don't want messages, I don't want dollars, I don't want patience, and I don't want students. One thing alone do I want: the feeling of God's presence, the awareness of God's presence, the consciousness of my oneness with God. Let me feel that God is living my life, and I'll trust myself to go around the world without purse or script. I'll trust myself to go in any class without a message. Just let me feel that God is holding my hand. Just let me feel that the presence of God is with me. And I'll be like Daniel. I won't mind lions either. But oh, I want to be awfully sure that I have God right there beside me. Or I could be very frightened of a pussycat. Because there is no such thing as personal power. And those who believe there is, sooner or later, find a power greater than themselves. And then they're broken with it. And even leaning on God for something can be dangerous. I remember a Christian Science lecturer who once said, quoting, "To those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings." Then he says, "Only be sure you don't lean too long." Yes, you see, the sustaining infinite, that isn't God, that's an idea in your mind. That's a belief, that's a form, that's an effect, that's a concept. And you can't afford to lean on it. The only thing you can lean on is nothingness. Nothing that you know, nothing that you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, then you can lean. And you won't have to lean. Not what I know, because God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways, so what's the good of my having any thoughts, even good ones? In the same way the Master says, my peace give I unto thee, not as the world giveth. Now what's the use of me getting peace out of singing songs or having money or sunshine? My peace, there's a spiritual peace that transcends human understanding. But it only comes to the individual who has made conscious union with God. In that union with God, all things appear in the outer world. Now, I think there's one help I can give to you along this line that will make this come into your experience sooner than might otherwise be the case. The essence of this you'll find in the September, October, and November letters. We call it the correct letter of truth. Now, the correct letter of truth itself isn't a power. It doesn't heal anybody, it doesn't reform anybody, it doesn't do anything for anybody of itself. But the correct letter of truth taken into one's consciousness, thought about, pondered, meditated upon, lived with, practiced, develops the spiritual state of consciousness. Now let me show you how that works. Let us take one of our basic premises, that there is no power in form or effect. Well, that might mean that there is no power in this money. You don't care what the amount is, any amount would be the same. We place the money here, and now watch how much power there's in it. There it stays, and there it will stay. Forever and forever and forever, just dead. Just dead. It has no power. It can't go out and buy a cup of coffee. It can't draw interest. It can't multiply itself. It can't come to me and it can't go to you. It's absolutely dead. Now, the minute you perceive that, you say, well then why struggle for it? Why struggle for that dead thing? It isn't worth it. then, what is the secret of supply? Well, whatever there is in me that brought this to me, oh, that's something. Because that has the power now to know what to do with this and how to get the cup of coffee. Now I can use this for a tool or an instrument because the intelligence that brought it to me is the intelligence that can spend it or invest it. Then it isn't this that's worth struggling about. It is the spiritual wisdom that brings this to me. Then the power isn't in money. The power is in supply, the invisible Spirit of God or intelligence or love that is within me. Because that Spirit of God in me drew this to me. And the Spirit of God in me will maintain this with me. And then the Spirit of God with me will intelligently and lovingly dispose of it. Do you see that? So we say, this isn't supply. This is an instrument of supply or a form of supply, an outer expression of supply, but it isn't supply. This is dead. Now, if I'm going through a period of lack, I take that principle into my consciousness. And every time the thought of money comes to me, or food or clothing or housing, I say, no, that's not supply. Those are the forms of supply, but supply is infinite and omnipresent. Why? Because God is my supply. And God is infinite and God is omnipresent. Wherever I am, God is. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. Therefore, I have an infinity of supply. Now, saying this or reading it in a book won't make my demonstration. But if I ponder it, if every day I think upon it, if each day money gets deader and deader to me, if each day I keep reminding myself, supply I have, I don't even have to pray for it. The kingdom of God is established in me. Even God couldn't withhold it from me or take it from me. The whole kingdom of God is established within me, and infinity of supply is the measure of my supply. All I have to do is do that, and gradually my consciousness changes from the one that had faith in money to one that has an understanding of the omnipresence of supply. Thereby I develop the spiritual consciousness of supply. Now that may take a week, a month, a year before it's completely fulfilled. It won't take that long to start. But within a week, a day, a month, we will find that we are losing our fear of lack. We're losing our fear of money and our love for it, because now we're commencing to see it as something dead, just a form to be used. But supply, and that changes our consciousness. Well then, we take another principle. There are people who are suffering with heart, liver, lungs, digestion, elimination. And behind all of that, of course, is the belief that harmony is in some organ or function of the body. Well, sure, that's what all human life is built on. If anything happens to the heart, you die. If everything happens to the digestion or elimination, you get sick. So now we have to reverse that. life is God. So then life is not dependent on heart, liver, or lung. But heart, liver, and lung is dependent on life. It's life that moves the heart. It's life that moves the liver and the digestion and the elimination and the muscles. It isn't the body that moves life. It's life that moves the body, and life I've got. Because I can say I am. As long as I can say I am life. I am being. I am existing. And as long as I am I have life. And that life governs the body. Now, as I maintain that, I am losing the materialistic consciousness of body as governing life, and I'm attaining the spiritual awareness of life governing the body. Jesus put it in these words, "Man shall not live by bread alone." Man shall not live by form or effect, whether it's baker's bread or whether it's butcher's meat or the meat that we call heart, liver, or lungs. Man shall not live by form, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Therefore, as long as I realize that the Word of God is my life and the life of my being and of my body, my whole consciousness is changing. And I stop fearing the body, and I stop fearing its organs and functions, and the first thing you know, I have developed this new consciousness. Now, after you've done that with supply, with health, companionship, weather, climate, whatever human problems come up, you are developing your consciousness on each of those points, and then you'll find what happens in the December letter. When you get the December letter, you will see the consciousness that is developed from the practice of the September, October, and November letters. But you never will have that consciousness of December until you have worked from January to November. You see, December is called Christmas. So if you want the Christmas consciousness, you have to work with 11 months before you get there. You can't jump into December until you've gone through January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November. And those who try to skip a few months don't get there. For that reason, then, don't think that we're going to get the consciousness of the 12th month of our life unless we have worked with the other 11-month consciousness. Now, as you work with the principles which constitute the letter of truth, you will find yourself developing the spirit or consciousness of truth. And so you'll find eventually that you'll be in the Christ consciousness where it is very easy to meditate. Because just remember, you have neither hate, fear, nor love of anything in the external realm. Even your friends and your family, your love has taken on a different nature. It isn't a physical nature or human nature, it's a spiritual nature. And it brings about in them a change towards you so that even they don't cling as they once did, or depend or rely. It sets them free. You know what it's like? We here in this room. There can be a tremendous love between all of us and not one trace of dependence, not one trace of parasitism, because the love would be such that we do not look to each other for anything. If we are sitting here realizing that God is the fulfillment of my being, we don't need anything of anyone, then we're free to love, because we're free to give and receive without any clinging or clawing or attachment. And that's what happens in our family. The very moment that we realize that I and the Father are one, and all the Father hath is mine, we can love our families without believing they owe us anything, and without feeling we owe them anything, because they have the same God we have. And pretty soon they find it as well as we do, and then we are united in a closer bond than we ever were before, because now we are united in that bond of love which can freely give and freely receive, and never feel that in giving we've deprived ourselves of anything, and in receiving that we haven't deprived anyone else of anything. It's the most wonderful thing when you come to the realization of your oneness with God. But you come to it by practicing it, and holding to it until gradually your whole consciousness changes. Then when it does, and this whole world becomes as dead to you as it could very quickly be of 1 franc, and when the whole world is that dead, you've won the whole world. It's all yours then. Every single bit of it is. Every bit of it is. It was only the desire for it that kept it away. So it is that too many have lost the God experience by chasing God too hard. Sometimes we have to rest and wait for God to catch up to us. Desiring God isn't always a truthful experience. We're desiring something that we think of as God. So we're desiring concepts or forms. Because we don't really have to desire God. I and the Father are already one. Therefore we have all the God there is. And it would be much better to relax. I and the Father are one. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. If I made my bed in heaven, I'd find God. If I made my bed in hell, I'd find God. For where I am, God is. And then relax, and you'd find that God would make itself known to you. Whereas the chasing after it sets up a barrier to it. Oh, I think the class today came out on a beautiful note. It came out on a beautiful, beautiful note. A wonderful climax to the work we have had. Because if this today does nothing else, it should enable you to relax, because you'll know there's nothing to be achieved, nothing to be gained, nothing to be won. All already is. The Lord already is my shepherd. I shall not want. Why? Because the Lord is my shepherd. Not because I earn it or deserve it or I'm worthy, not because I'm going to do anything. Just because the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Therefore I can give up mental energy. I can commence to understand, not by might nor by power, but by God's Spirit. Thank you. Thank you. We've had a beautiful, beautiful class this week.